Okay, so now the time has come. We've finally made it to the floor of the House of Representatives. And let's say you've been paying attention to the news and you say, hey, you know what? Phil's corn law is being voted on today. I took a class, a political science class with him back in College of the Canyons. Man, I want to watch this on C-SPAN. So you go ahead and you find out that at 8 o'clock in the morning, they're going to begin debating Phil's corn law. You're figuring, oh, cool. I'll sit down, they'll debate it, then I'll head off to work, or I'll go wherever I'm going to go, right? So you sit down and you go, okay, cool, this is going to be exciting. You better hang on because it's going to take a while before we get to a vote. The first thing that happens once it gets to the floor is a debate is going to begin. It's going to begin. But it's not going to be about the bill. It's going to be about the rules. See, the House has to vote in favor or against the rules before they can begin debating the actual bill. So one of the things they'll do is they'll start off by debating whether or not the rules that the Rules Committee came up with are acceptable. So they begin debate, and what happens is that there's equal time for both sides. The people who are in favor of the rules, and usually people who are in favor of the bill, and then the people who are against the rules, usually again people who are against the bill, start debating about the bill. But most of the time in the House of Representatives, it's not really a debate, right? The people who are in favor of the rules talk about how once this bill is passed, there'll be unicorns everywhere and rainbows and fairy dust will sprinkle on us all and we will all live happily ever after. And then the other side says, if this bill passes, it's going to be the end of humanity. Life as we know it will change and we will eventually be sucked into a dark star. Right? So, and that's the way it goes back and forth. And I'm only kind of exaggerating because it's that ridiculous. It's not a debate like I make a point, then you make a point, then I make a point, and we talk back and forth. They usually have speeches that they've already written. But after the debate ends, the first vote takes place. You're like, oh, they're voting on the bill. Nope. They're voting on the rules. They're voting on the rules. So they vote in favor of the rules. If a majority, so on the floor, if a majority supports the rules, then we can continue on with the process. If a majority doesn't support the rules, then we can't. We're done. The bill's going to have to go back to the Rules Committee for another set of rules that everybody can agree on, or at least a majority can agree on. Now, most of the time in the House of Representatives, which is a majoritarian institution, most of the time, if the rules package, if that's what it's called, the rules package, the rules, when they get voted on, they pass. Almost always. If they don't pass, something really bad happens, something really wrong happens, because the majority party is not supposed to lose in the House of Representatives. Now, let's say that they pass the rules and we've moved on. If the bill had an open rule or a modified rule where they allowed some amendments, then what would happen next, so you're thinking, okay, they voted on the rules. Okay, cool, now they're going to vote on Phil's corn law. This is going to be fun. Nope. If it's got a modified rule or if it's got an open rule, then the next thing that happens is they start to debate over the amendments that people are going to propose. And once again, like if somebody has an amendment, they say, let's say if it was an open rule and somebody says, I believe that I propose that we make it Phil's corn and potato law, right? And then, so somebody says, okay, let's debate that. And so somebody who's in favor of making it Phil's corn and potato law, they give their argument. Then somebody who's against it, they give their argument. Then everybody votes on it. And if a majority support it, then it becomes Phil's potato and corn and potato law. If a majority don't support it, then it goes back to just being Phil's corn law. But we're going to assume for the sake of discussion that Phil's corn law had a closed rule. There were no amendments. So they've debated over the rules, right? The rules passed. So now we're going to begin debate on the bill, what's called step 3 in your notes. Now the debate on the bill actually begins. Before they were debating the rules. Now they're debating the actual bill. Once the debate starts, once again, time is equally divided between both sides. People who are in favor of the bill speak, then people who are against the bill speak, then they just go back and forth. One side speaks, and another side speaks, and another side speaks. Now, let's say all the time is used up. They've debated. Let's say there was going to be an hour of debate, and the hour is up. And you're like, well, you're looking at your watch, I really got to go. But now they're finally going to go ahead and vote on Phil's corn law. I've been waiting for this all day long. This is so cool. Not quite. the next thing that happens is that the minority party gets to propose an alternative, what they sometimes are called a substitute bill. Basically what that is if, let's say I'm a Republican, so the Democrats are the minority, and let's say the Democrats have an alternative bill, Joe's Corn Law, sort of what Democrats would do if they were in the majority party. Well, what happens is before we vote on my bill, the minority party gets to go ahead and offer an alternative or a substitute. This is what we would have done if we were in charge. We would go ahead and we would do this. And then what happens is they all vote on it. Now, think about it yourself for a second. These alternative bills that are presented by the majority party, by the minority party, do they ever win? No, they don't. The minority party, their alternative, never wins, right? But they get to propose it, sort of like, this is what we would do. Yeah, we know we're going to lose, but here you go anyways. This is what we would have done if we were in charge. So if a majority rejects the alternative bill, which they always do, then finally the House votes on what I'm calling the underlying bill, Phil's Corn Law. Now finally, we're going to vote on Phil's Corn Law, and the House votes on Phil's Corn Law. So that's the process, right? It starts off first with a debate on the rules, and then a vote on the rules. If it's got an open rule, then they begin debate on the amendments, and then both sides get to say whether they're in favor or against the amendments, and then they vote on the amendments. Then when that's all done, they start debate on the bill, and then once the bill has been debated, they vote, but not on the bill itself. They vote on the alternative that the minority party wants to present. That loses. Then finally, at the very end, they get to vote on the underlying bill, on Phil's Corn Law. So even though you sat down at 8 o'clock thinking we were going to get to a vote right away, that isn't the way it happens. That isn't the way it happens, and I'll tell you what, it isn't at all the way it happens in the United States Senate. So now we're going to move on to the Senate, because for the most part, we've covered everything that happens in the Senate. It's just a little bit different, and you'll see. Here's the Senate on this side. Now what happens in the Senate is the Senate Majority Leader will be the one who goes ahead and assigns a bill to a committee. Now in the Senate it's a little bit different. The Speaker has a lot of power in the House. The Senate Majority Leader isn't quite as powerful. So it's actually a little bit more complicated than what I'm describing, but for our purposes this will be good enough. The Senate Majority Leader goes ahead and decides what committee the bill is going to go to. And so we're going to assume for the sake of discussion that in this case, just like in the House, the bill goes to the committee, and it's got a slightly different name in the Senate. It's the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. But they deal with agricultural issues, so that's where it's going to go. Phil's Corn Law is going to go there. So Phil's Corn Law goes to the chair of the Agricultural and Nutrition Committee, and the chairman's going to do the same thing that the chairman in the House did. Chairman's going to send it to one of the subcommittees to go ahead and have hearings and have a markup and do all the same things that were done in the House of Representatives. Propose amendments, hold hearings, vote on them, and then if a majority supports the bill here, then it can move to the full committee in the House, in the Senate. But if a majority don't support it, it dies there. Once it goes to the full committee, the same process happens again. They hold hearings, they do a markup, they debate the bill, and once they're done, if a majority supports the bill, then it passes. If they don't, if a majority of the full committee doesn't support the bill, it dies. So we've seen that there's a whole bunch of places, at least in terms of voting, the subcommittee in the House, the full committee in the House. On the floor, it can obviously die. On the floor, it can die in the, oh, I'm sorry, I was on the wrong one. The subcommittee in the House, the full committee in the House, it can die in the Rules Committee in the House, and it can die in the floor on the House. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4 places it can die, and then over in the Senate, it can die in the subcommittee, it can die in the full committee, and of course it can die on the floor as well, which is what we'll be talking about next. About what happens when a bill gets to the floor of the Senate. And that will be in How a Bill Becomes a Law, .04.